welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 553. And today's date is December 29th, 2014. And the title of this episode is Al-Qaeda Threatens Lone Wolf Attacks on Airlines as AirAsia Goes Missing. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand in Europe it's a little different there than it is here in the United States. Here, they're manipulating their numbers. They're convincing the American people that we are in a recovery. The stock market continually hits all-time new highs. In Europe, it's a little bit different. There's many different countries involved in the Eurozone, and each country is seemed to be separate and apart from what is really going on there. And we can see that countries like Greece, like Cyprus, like France, Spain, Portugal, Italy, they are completely in a recession/depression. Some are in a depression. Some are teetering on a recession, or in some are in a deep recession. And we see it spreading to Germany, UK, and other countries. Right now in Greece, Goldman Sachs was out there warning us that if you do not do what we tell you, you will have Cyprus-style bail-ins. And we can see right now the elections are not going well. They're scheduled for sometime in January. Things are looking worse and worse, and the bankers are threatening the people of Greece. Jean-Claude Juncker, who quite explicitly warned Greeks not to vote the wrong way. And if you do, you could see Cyprus-style prolonged bank holidays. We will go in and take your money. And we know they are ready and willing to do this because they've created the bail-in documents. They have been prepared for this. If you do not do what we say, we will wreak havoc on your country's economy. And we can see this is exactly what's going on. Maybe Greece should do exactly what Iceland did. Get rid of the bankers, write off the debt, and say, you know what, we're just not paying you back, and throw all those bankers in jail. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's where they're headed. Maybe that's what they should do. Here in the United States, what are we seeing? We are seeing the economy completely falling apart. The U.S. government, the central bankers, they are doing everything they possibly can to keep this economy propped up until they can get that event. And that event will blame the entire collapse on another group or country. But we can see right now what they're doing. They're pumping up the stock market. They're bringing down the gas prices to try to get this holiday season going, keep retail going, try to convince everyone that we are in this fantastic recovery. But guess what? It is not working. They can continually lower the price of gas, but it will not help with this collapse that is coming. Yes, it might prolong it, which they're trying to do, but we can see right now it is not working whatsoever. We already see the Dallas Fed has tumbled below the lowest estimate. The General Business Activity Index fell from 10.5 down to 4.1. We already know they recalculated and manipulated the GDP, and they told us they increased it to 5%. They're doing everything they can to convince everyone that the economy is doing fine and people are out there spending. Retail holiday sales, they're incredible. I did a poll on the X22Report.com site. Out of 1,000 people that took this poll, 66% said they spent less this holiday season. 28% said they spent the same, and 5% said they spent more this holiday season. And it completely counteracts what the corporate media has been telling us. And every time I take a poll, I tell people to be completely honest. What have you really done? How do you really feel? And every time I do a poll, it is always the opposite of what the corporate media is telling us. But we can see now that there are stores that are letting us know that they'll be closing more stores in 2015. And this is a really good indicator to show us that people are really not out there shopping. Now, again, we have to realize as more and more stores close, they reduce their expenses, they show profits, and they say, everything is fine, everything is just working perfectly, and we're in a recovery, sales are up. Well, really what you did is you got rid of employees, you got rid of stores. If things are really going well, guess what? You expand, you don't contract. But here we see that Office Depot in 2015, they're going to close 250 stores. Aéropostale is going to close 75 stores in 2015. Sears, they're looking at 77 stores. Staples, 55 stores in 2015. And I'm going to say these numbers are going to go way up, and we're going to see a lot more retailers put in that they're closing stores, laying off people. And again, These people who have been working part-time in these stores, a lot of them are not counted because they don't meet the requirements of certain of the states, which means you have to work a certain number of hours, get paid a certain number of dollars, and if you do not meet these requirements, you cannot apply for unemployment. And we see this quite a bit. You're not counted, and this is exactly what's going on. There's a lot more people out there who are unemployed that are not counted, and we know for a fact what they do is they count those people who haven't been on an interview within 4 weeks or so. They've said, they just given up. They don't want a job. They don't want to support their family. They don't want to bring an income. They don't want to live in a nice place. They don't want to pay their rent. They don't want to pay their car payments. They just don't feel like working anymore, which is absolutely ridiculous. Basically, what's happening is the economy is leaving the people. The people are not leaving the economy. Now, as we know, the U.S. government, the central bankers, they're doing everything. I mean, look how much they had to bring the gas prices down to convince everyone that the economy is doing well, to get those people out to these stores. I mean, look what they have to do to try to drive sales. This tells us something. This tells us that something is not right. This tells us if the oil prices stayed the way they were, this Christmas season would have been a lot worse. And like I said in the past, I'm not taking any extra money that I have from from filling up my car. Basically, I'm just getting a lot more gas for my money, and I'm not going out saying, hey, you know what, maybe I should buy that new TV, maybe I should buy that Blu-ray player. And I think a lot of people are saying, you know what, I'm going to hold on to my money, I'm going to use it to pay for the gas in my car, and that is it, because I know eventually these prices will eventually go back up. Now, we understand that the U.S. and Saudi Arabia might have conspired to push down oil prices. And we have to think about this. Are falling oil prices part of a U.S.-Saudi plan to inflict economic damage on Russia, Iran, and Venezuela? Well, the president of Venezuela seems to think so. The president of Bolivia agrees with the president of Venezuela. The reduction in oil prices was provoked by the U.S. as an attack on the economies of Venezuela and Russia. In the face of such economic and political attacks, the nations must be united. This is what the president of Bolivia has said. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani said the same thing with slightly different twist. The main reason for the oil price plunge is a political conspiracy by certain countries against the interests of the region and the Islamic world. And we can see right now that according to Arabia's petroleum minister, no, we are not doing this with the United States. We're not involved in any type of conspiracy to lower oil prices. He says the tumbling prices of oil are the result of a lack of cooperation by the non-OPEC production nations, along with the spread of misinformation and speculators' greed. Well, we've heard this before. Didn't President Nixon come out in the 70s saying that they're going to take the U.S. off the gold standard because of speculation, and this is temporary? Basically, he lied during that time period. There were no speculators. They wanted the central bank to have free reign of creating funds. And we can see right now they always use speculators as the reason why this is happening. But we know better. We understand what's going on. Think about this. Why would the Saudis suddenly abandon a strategy that allowed them to rake in twice as much dough as they are today? And we have to look at this. What happened prior to the oil prices coming down? In September, John Kerry and Saudi King Abdullah struck a deal to boost production in order to hurt Iran and Russia. An article titled, "Stakes Are High as U.S. Plays the Oil Card against Iran and Russia." And this is from the article. With the help of its Saudi ally, Washington has tried to drive down the oil price by flooding an already weak market with crude. As the Russians and the Iranians are heavily dependent on oil exports, the assumption is that they will become easier to deal with. John Kerry, the U.S. Secretary of State, allegedly struck a deal with King Abdullah in September under which the Saudis would sell crude at below the prevailing market price. That would help explain why the price has been falling at a time when, given the turmoil in Iraq and Syria caused by Islamic State, it would normally have been rising. The Saudis did something similar in 1980. Then the geopolitical motivation for a move that sent the oil price to below $10 a barrel was to destabilize Saddam Hussein's regime. This time, according to Middle East specialists, the Saudis want to put pressure on Iran and to force Moscow into weaken its support for the Assad regime in Syria. And we can see right now, this is exactly what's going on. The United States, which in the last year has imposed harsh economic sanctions on Russia, made every effort to sabotage the South Stream pipeline and topple the government in Kiev so it could control the flow of Russian gas to the countries in the EU. All of this was being done to bring down Russia, to capture Ukraine. And we can see and we know that the United States was involved in convincing Bulgaria to not go along with the South Stream project. There was senators there. There were government officials in that country. We understand that taking over Ukraine was a coup d'etat, and we understand it cost billions of dollars to do this. We also understand they've been placing sanctions on Russia to hurt them economically, and that wasn't working whatsoever. So what they did was they came up with this plan of reducing the oil prices. And we can see right now this is what they've been using to put pressure on Russia to leave Ukraine completely alone, get out of Crimea, so the central bankers can take Ukraine like they planned on when they had the coup d'etat. To continue with the agenda, the U.S. coerced the Saudis into flooding the market with oil in order to decimate the Russian economy, savage the ruble, and create favorable conditions for regime change in Moscow. And we know for a fact they're not just trying this in Russia. They are trying this in China with the umbrella protests. They're trying to have a regime change because we know in 2015, BRICS goes live. The IMF is going to make a determination and look at the yuan renminbi to see if it should be a reserve currency. They don't want Russia out there making deals with China. They want Russia out of Ukraine, and they're doing everything they possibly can to push their agenda. And this is how we know that, yes, U.S. and Saudi have worked together to push these prices down. How long will it last? I don't think it's going to go past the spring of 2015. I think we're going to see it start inch up once again, because at that point in time, if it worked, it would have worked already. And if it didn't, they're just going to let the oil prices go back up where they were. The holiday season is over. And again, bringing the oil prices down was used for many different agendas, not just one. Now, we understand the United States government, the central bankers, have been trying to remove all of our rights. I mean, we can just see it, we understand it, we know it. Look at the First Amendment, free speech. They're setting up fenced-in, caged areas, and they're telling people you need to go into these areas to speak freely. They set up laws where you cannot have protests if you are a certain number of feet away from a government official. They're putting up barriers, building larger fences in front of the White House. Look how they're treating the people. They're using false flag events to convince the American people that weapons are dangerous and people should not have assault rifles. People should not have any of these type of weapons. And we can see in Sandy Hook, which was a complete false flag. And from the FBI report, we see that nobody died there. We see there's a movie director, author, is now suing the corporate media and the government for trillions, saying this was a complete hoax, that Sandy Hook never really happened. We have other people looking into the situation and questioning everything, and we know it was a complete hoax. Nothing is panning out. Everything is fake. It's to convince people that, yes, we need to take your weapons. They tried, and they continually try. This is why we see thousands upon thousands of laws on the books to try to infringe on the Second Amendment. And December 24th, guess what? The UN Arms Trade Treaty took effect. Now again, the Senate has not ratified the UN Arms Trade Treaty. They're trying to push that through, and we know for a fact that President Obama will sign it if it gets to his desk. And we have to look once again at the UN Arms Treaty. It is very, very dangerous. Article 2 of the treaty defines the scope of the treaty's prohibitions. The right to own, buy, sell, trade, or transfer all means of armed resistance, including handguns, is denied to civilians by this section of the Arms Trade Treaty. Article 3 places the ammunition, munitions fired, launched, or delivered by the conventional arms covered under Article 2 within the scope of the treaty's prohibitions as well. Article 4 places all parts and components of weapons within the scheme. And if you really listen to all these articles, Obama has already come up with the executive orders that supports all this. Article 5, under the title of General Implementation, Article 5 mandates that all countries participating in the treaty shall establish and maintain a national control system, including a national control list. This should apply the provisions of this treaty to the broadest range of conventional arms, and they've already done that. Article 12 adds to the record-keeping requirement, mandating that the list include the quantity, value, model type, authorized international transfers of conventional arms, as well as the identity of the end users of these items. The agreement also demands that the national government take appropriate measures to enforce the terms of the treaty, including civilian disarmament. If these countries can't get this done on their own, however, Article 16 provides for UN assistance, specifically including help with the enforcement of stockpile management, disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration programs. So we can see right now this is ready to be implemented here in the United States. The president already created the executive orders. They're trying to convince the people that, yes, we need to do this. Yes, we need the UN Arms Treaty. And guess what? We don't need this. We have the Bill of Rights. We have the rights of the people where we're allowed to own arms. It shall not be infringed upon. But again, the government, the central bankers, they will do everything to make it seem like that weapons of any kind are very dangerous. And this is why in the past year or so, or year and a half, we've seen the ramp up of these false flag events. It's continuing, it's ongoing, and we most likely will see another, because now, as the UN Arms Treaty went live, they really need the Senate to pass this. This is what they've been trying to do. They've been trying to get that passed, the Dianne Feinstein bill passed. They're trying to get it all passed, and we're most likely going to see another shooting come up very, very soon to see if they can get the Senate to go ahead. And again, like I said in the past, it will have to be a lot bloodier and much more horrific than Sandy Hook, even though we don't know Sandy Hook really didn't occur. They're going to make it seem like it did occur. They're going to make it seem like it's much more horrific, and they're going to call on the American people, Bloomberg, the senators, to vote this through. They will do everything and anything to get this through, and we need to stop it one way or another. Now, as we know, the corporate media has been all over the disappearance of AirAsia, and what's very interesting about all this is that about a half a year after the disappearance of Malaysian flight MH370, you would have thought that the airlines would have taken precautions to keep track of airplanes at any given moment, but this really hasn't happened. Now, this plane did disappear. It was quite unexpected, even to the pilots, as flight QZ8501 did not even get a chance to issue a distress signal, and it disappeared over the Java Sea 5 minutes after requesting the change of course, which was refused by the air traffic controller, saying there was a lot of heavy traffic in the area and they just couldn't change the course. And the airplane in question, the Airbus A320, really has a spotless flight history. There's no problems with this plane whatsoever, and it seems very interesting and very surprising that this plane would have gone down. But what's more surprising is that the chief executive officer, Tan Sri Tony Fernandez, pretty much sold his 944,000 shares prior to this. Very interesting. And what has happened since then is that the shares have lost about 7% since the plane has gone down. And we can see that, did he know something prior to this? Was something planned? I'm not really sure at this time, but it seems very coincidental, and I don't believe in coincidences. I believe things are planned like this, and nobody just gets up and sells shares all of a sudden, and then we have a plane go down, and the shares lose about 7%. So something definitely was going on. People knew about it, and we'll have to look into the situation more as time goes on. Now, as we can see, President Obama is out there telling everyone that, the longest war in the history of the United States is completely over. We're pulling out the troops in Afghanistan. There will be no more war there. But this is furthest from the truth. We have to go back in time a little bit. During President Karzai's reign over Afghanistan, the United States government and NATO wanted him to sign a bilateral security agreement which will allow the U.S. troops and NATO to stay in Afghanistan. He would not sign this agreement, and this is why the United States had to start withdrawing the troops from Afghanistan, because without this, there would be no immunity to the soldiers. Now, John Kerry was in Afghanistan helping with the elections, trying to get that person in there that would sign the bilateral security agreement, and of course, they had that person elected. That president, the new president, said, yes, I will sign the bilateral security agreement, and all of a sudden the troops are now staying in there. And we see NATO troops are being ramped up inside of Afghanistan. And this war is going to be continuous. NATO's new Resolute Support mission in Afghanistan gears up for launch later this week. It is becoming obvious that the U.S. military presence in the country will now be extended for an indefinite period of time. This is the longest war in American history, and apparently it is not going to end now. This is coming from a professor of history at the University of Arizona, David Gibbs. The longer the U.S. stays in Afghanistan, the more there is a reaction that the U.S. is occupying the country with negative results in terms of security. And this is why they're saying it's ended, and they're calling it a different name. Basically, they're just trying to confuse people. They're giving it a new name. They're telling it we've ended it, and now we're starting up a completely new mission, and we're setting in NATO troops and U.S. troops, and they will be in there for security reasons, training the Afghan people. But we've there for how many years? 13 years, and there was no training going on all throughout this time. No, basically what they're doing is they're garrisoning the country. They're making sure they're protecting the poppy fields, because they use that to pay for their covert missions by selling it as opium around the world. We understand that Afghanistan has oil, it has lithium, it has copper, and we understand that China and Russia are making deals with the new president. And the United States is never going to leave this area. They will be there forever. The war will go on forever, and we can see this is exactly what's going on. Now, out in Ukraine, we see the largest nuclear plant has been shut down. One of the reactors in Ukraine did an automatic shutdown after a glitch. There was the second halt in operation in recent weeks at the plant in Ukraine's southeast, and I'm wondering if they just don't have the funds to keep everything running and keep everything running perfectly, and this is why it's continually shutting down, and they're finding a lot of problems with the plant there. And we can see right now that Ukraine is in a very, very tough position. Their economy is falling apart. They need more and more loans. They don't have enough coal in the country to keep the electricity running. Natural gas is still pouring in right now as long as they pay the bill. But on December 27th, Russian President Vladimir Putin decided that Ukraine cannot now pay for the coal and will soon go bankrupt. So he said, you know what? I will donate the coal to Ukraine. He's supplying them with 50,000 tons of coal per day to Ukraine in order to help them through the winter. The official announcement said that this is a demonstration of goodwill of President Putin to provide real support for the Ukrainian people. And again, this is a very good thing, because you have to think of the people. I mean, without this, they would be freezing. They couldn't, boil water. They can't stay in their homes with heat. It would be very, very difficult. And a lot of the people there have been chopping wood, preparing for this type of situation. But we can see right now with the coal, with the natural gas, they should be able to make it through the winter. Where's the United States in all this? Where are they helping them? Are they donating coal to Ukraine? No. What are they doing? They're bringing in military assets. They haven't done anything else. They're loaning them money. That is it. They want war. The bankers did not get what they're paid for. Now, Poroshenko is out there saying that they might have to purchase coal from the southeastern section. You have to remember, they produce coal. Poroshenko and Yatsenyuk were saying, well, we shouldn't have to purchase the coal from the southeastern section. That is part of Ukraine. They should just give it to us. But now they say they're in a tough bind right now, and they might have to go ahead and purchase coal from this area. Ukraine is also importing electric from Russia. Because they can't meet the needs of everyone there, and they're importing electricity, which was made by an agreement yesterday. Now, we understand that the southeastern section of Ukraine and Kiev have been meeting, and they've been talking about peace and ceasefires, but right now representatives from Kiev and the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic met in Donetsk for talks, but no agreement has actually been reached. 3 issues were discussed: the ceasefire, the pullback of heavy artillery, and prisoner exchanges. We do see prisoner exchanges going on right now, but no agreements have been reached yet, and this is coming from both representative, and it looks like there's a new meeting which is scheduled for December 31st. We will have to see how this works out. But Poroshenko is out there saying that the military operations in eastern Ukraine will not end until January 15th. Peace is a long process, he says. It is easy to launch war, but it is difficult to stop it. There is no military solution to the conflict in eastern Ukraine, Poroshenko stressed. He added that he will impose martial law in Ukraine if the peace process is disrupted. Now, as we know, the United States is moving military assets from Afghanistan into Ukraine. They're also moving military assets into the Middle East, into depots in Kuwait surrounding Iraq at this point in time. And a Russian lawmaker is out there saying the relocation of U.S. hardware from Afghanistan to Ukraine suggests that Obama will lead to more casualties, that they are preparing for some type of offensive. Russia cannot be content with such plans, as they would increase the tensions near our borders and also inevitably cause more casualties in Donbass. The U.S. Senate's decision to arm Ukraine has revealed that Washington is not interested in de-escalation of the Ukrainian conflict. In a few years, Ukraine will turn into a poor, hungry country with an anti-Russian government that will teach its population to hate Russia. They will be armed to the teeth, and Ukraine and U.S. reluctance to recognize the Russian Federation within its current borders would always provoke conflicts. And we can see this is exactly what they want. This is why they're bringing in the military assets. This is why Congress, the Senate, passed the new Ukraine Freedom Act, which is really no freedom whatsoever. It's basically military aid, bringing in lethal weapons. They are planning for a major offensive. When will this occur? We're not sure at this point in time, but you can see everything is being maneuvered, everything is getting ready, and they are preparing for something really big. Now, we understand the Middle East is completely falling apart. We understand the United States government, the central bankers, Israel, UK, other Arab nations, the coalition forces, they are using the Islamic State as their proxy army. We understand they're trying to make it look like they're a terrorist organization to scare everyone around the world. We see the lone wolves attacks in Australia, in Canada, soon to come to the UK, maybe another one in France where they tried to gin that one up. We'll see one in the United States. They need to make it look like it's spreading all across the globe. We understand the Islamic State allegedly somehow shot down a Jordanian plane. Of course, the U.S. government, the military armed forces are saying, no, this did not happen, it just crashed. But the Obama administration is saying, yes, they have the ability to shoot down planes. The Jordanian parliamentarians have accused the United States of escalating the crisis in Syria and have urged the Jordanian government to refrain from further military cooperation with Washington against the Islamic State. And it looks like Jordan is backing out, saying, you know what, United States, go ahead, fight your war. And we can see right now, the United States government, the central bankers, they need to get into Syria because then it's a direct path into Iran. They need to prop up the dollar. They want the natural resources on the dollar. So this way, other countries hold the dollar in reserve to pay for that oil. And this is why we see in Libya, they are building up military assets around Libya, bringing in more, setting up bases with France and other countries. They are getting ready to go into Libya. As soon as the people there take over the oil fields, the ports, and they're secure and they start selling the oil, not using the US dollar, we will see a ramp up into Libya. And this is why we see them spreading the Islamic State into each one of these countries, because it's going to be used to get into those countries where they need to get back into, to replace the governments there with the puppet government. And they're using the Islamic State to get into those countries that they need to get into. And we can see they're ramping this up. Now, over the weekend, we see the United States and allies carried out about 12 airstrikes. Many more airstrikes are on their way, and since Saturday there have been many more airstrikes. But what did they actually destroy? Well, strikes near Kobani, a Syrian town along the border with Turkey, destroyed buildings. They destroyed in al-Assad, Mosul, Fallujah. They destroyed buildings there, vehicles, and refineries. And again, they're destroying the infrastructure. That is all they're doing. They're destroying the entire infrastructure of Syria, making it look like they're going after the Islamic State. And as we know from reports before, the Islamic State already understands and knows when these air raids are coming, and they completely get out of the area. And all we're seeing is the destruction of buildings, refineries, oil fields, vehicles. And a lot of this has nothing to do with the Islamic State whatsoever. They're trying to cripple the economy of Syria. Now, the Islamic State is now claiming they have downed a second fighter jet in Balad, north of Baghdad, and captured the pilot. The Islamic State has taken to social media to ask how the first captured Jordanian pilot should die. This is all propaganda. Yes, will they kill him? They could. They might. But it's propaganda to convince everyone they have the ability to shoot down fighter jets. And this is going to lead to the no-fly zone. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to convince everyone that if the United States, the coalition, fly into this area, the fighter jets will have a problem maneuvering in this area, because they will be able to be shot down out of the air. And you can see right now they're pushing the agenda, trying to get that buffer zone in place, and we'll have to see how far they're going to take this. Now, we understand the United States is using North Korea and this cyber attack on Sony, which we know it is not from North Korea whatsoever. There's many cyber security forensic operators out there saying, you know what, we looked over this and we cannot find any evidence whatsoever. It is from North Korea. And we know for a fact the FBI, the Obama administration does this many times over, where they just put a story out there, they lie to the American people to convince everyone, and then they never go back and say, you know what, we made a mistake, or, yeah, we were lying to you. They want everyone to believe that it was North Korea. And we understand that North Korea was hit by a second internet shutdown on Saturday in what has all the earmarks of a U.S. cyber attack aimed at escalating its confrontation with North Korea. President Obama warned a proportionate response against North Korea at a time and place of our choosing. He further inflamed tensions with North Korea by urging Sony to reverse its decision to withdraw the film from circulation. Just days later, on December 22nd, North Korea's internet access collapsed for the first time, blacking out the entire country. On both occasions, Washington refused to confirm or deny responsibility. Sam Glines, who runs the cybersecurity company Norse, bluntly told CNN, "It's clear to us, based on both forensic and other evidence we have collected, that unequivocally they, North Korea, are not responsible for orchestrating or initiating the attack on Sony. The U.S. is not ratcheting up tensions with North Korea because the country poses a growing threat. The Obama administration aggressive policy towards North Korea is bound up with its far broader pivot to Asia, centrally targeting China." Beijing had decided to provide financial assistance to Moscow, threatening the U.S. financial blockade of Russia by winding up tensions with North Korea. Obama is also threatening China, which has long regarded North Korea as a crucial buffer on its northeastern borders. The last thing that Beijing wants is a Korea unified with the South, with the North and the South, and having America right there on the border of China. And just today, in the corporate media, we see the North and the South having talks to see if they can unite together. And we can see they're trying everything they possibly can, and they're getting ready for World War III. We already know they positioned and encircled China. Obama was out there saying this is there to contain China. We understand in Eastern Europe, they're setting up the military assets, bringing it in to contain Russia. Military assets are in the Middle East and in Africa. They are getting ready on all fronts. Now, the Islamic State is out there, and they are giving warnings. The UK intelligence has warned the Queen's Guard about an Islamic State plan to attack the soldiers. We will most likely see another lone wolf attack in the UK because, like I said before, they need to make it look like the Islamic State is everywhere, and anyone can be activated at any time, and they can hit using these lone wolf attacks anywhere at any time. The intelligence picked up chatter, which is being taken seriously. The Islamic State knows it would be very difficult to attack members of the royal family, but they can hit the guards, and this is exactly what they most likely will try. They will try to go after some type of attack that it looks like they're trying to attack the royal family, and we can see it happened in Australia with a lone wolf by keeping hostages in this lint shop there. We see in Canada there was a lone wolf attack. There will be one in Europe, in UK, and eventually here in the United States. Now, al-Qaeda is out there, and they are now threatening with their online magazine that they need to carry out lone wolf attacks on major Western airlines, as well as providing a step-by-step bomb-making guide and advice on how to evade airport security, get these bombs on the plane, and deliver them to the United States or Europe. Here are the U.S. carriers that are on their list: United and Delta Airlines, followed by British Airways, EasyJet, Air France, and Dutch KLM. They're also saying that they should cause economic instability by assassinating high-profile people like Ben Bernanke, the chairman of the Fed. Well, he's no longer the chairman, so whoever's writing this doesn't know what they're talking about, but that's besides the point. They're also trying to hit Bill Gates because he's a business tycoon. Now, we can see what they're trying to do here. They're trying to use this propaganda to convince us that the al-Qaeda, the Islamic State, will be carrying out all these attacks. And we have to remember, we do have two airlines that have gone missing now, AirAsia and MH370. We understand that Israel does have a plane that mimics the Malaysian MH370. We also have to remember, they're saying that in Libya, airlines have gone missing, and they could be used as an attack, as lone wolves attacks using airlines here in the United States and in Europe. So they are definitely preparing, getting set up, and getting ready to do something and to have some type of major event. And this is why all these warnings are coming out, and we understand that time is of the essence. The economies are falling apart. It's getting harder and harder to convince people that the recovery is here. They're doing everything, they're pulling everything out of the book that they possibly can use to make the economy look like it's improving. But again, it is falling apart faster and faster. It's harder to keep all the pieces together. All they have going for them is the suppression of gold, the increase of the stock market, and lowering the price of gas. But eventually, soon, this will run out of time where the real economic indicators override what they're trying to manipulate, and people who are standing on line to get food using their food stamps, those people who are living in 10 cities, this will continually to grow as time goes on. More people will be out of work, and before you know it, they will have nothing but an economic disaster. And this is why they're trying to create this event before this happens. And this is why they've been nationalizing the police. This is why they've been training DHS. This is why Europe has the Euro police to be dispatched to any country that needs assistance. This is why London has ordered water cannons to keep control of civil disobedience. This is why Spain is training their officers. So we can see they are definitely getting ready for something to go hot and live. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.